Welcome! In this video I'm going to talk a bit about the new line of MiG fighters that are being introduced in patch 1.6. First off, I think it's actually really good that this line's been introduced. It's probably this MiG line along with the Hawker British fighter line are probably the two types of fighters that are really missing from the game at the moment. And you could probably also add in the Republic, as in the P-47 Thunderbolt branch, and a Japanese land fighter branch would be the ones that are missing, as well as more ground attack aircraft, so I'm pretty happy this one's in. But I'm also a bit disappointed that it starts with the MiG-3, which you should see in front of you, assuming you've done everything right. I was kind of hoping at Tier 4 you would have the MiG-1, and then at Tier 3 you would have the I-153, which, although it was designed by Polikarpov, the lead designers were actually the MiG designers. I forget their name right now. But anyway, at Tier 5, the first one in this line, we have the MiG-3, which is a high altitude, high speed interceptor. It has the choice of either a 3 machine gun setup with 2 light machine guns, 1 heavy machine gun, or a 5 machine gun setup with 3 heavy machine guns and 2 light machine guns. And I chose to use the light machine gun setup, and in this variant it can outfly and outturn pretty much everything in its optimum altitude. But its dive speed and its rate of climb are not spectacular, so it's really a high-speed turn fighter as opposed to a more boom and zoom aircraft. Well, if it does do boom and zoom, it's a horizontal boom and zoom. You don't really want to go into long climbs or dive to get away from enemies unless you really have to. Next up, at Tier 6, there is the I-210, which, personally, it's probably my favourite aircraft in this line. I say probably, but actually this line's got quite a lot of aircraft I like. Anyway, the I-210, again, it is very fast. A top speed at best altitude of 680 km an hour, but its maximum dive speed's only 750, so as with the MiG-3, it doesn't gain a lot while diving. The rate of climb's alright at 21 meters per second, but that's not the best at Tier 6. But again, it's got good manoeuvrability, good rate of roll. So I think this aircraft is just very well balanced. It's not the fastest in terms of vertical manoeuvring, it's not the best in terms of horizontal manoeuvring, but it's got the balance of the two that you can generally outfly almost everything, provided you think a bit about what you're doing. The one downside of this aircraft is that I feel it's slightly undergunned. It has the option of 3 heavy machine guns or 2 20mm cannons, both of which are actually perfectly adequate at this tier. They're not, say, slightly undergunned, but only ever slightly, and that's really the only drawback with this aircraft. I actually had a lot of fun playing it, even though I'm playing with huge disadvantages, this being the test server and I've got a high ping, but it was still great fun. At tier 7 we have the I-220, which I thought when I looked at the stats I would really like this aircraft, because it looks basically like an I-210, except slightly less manoeuvrable but a little bit faster. But it gets the option of having 4 20mm cannons, and 4 very good 20mm cannons as well. So I thought, this is the aircraft that's basically going to fix the one problem I had with the I-210, and it was going to be perfect. But I'm not sure whether it was just me, but I just didn't have a lot of fun in this aircraft. I found that, well, on paper its statistics looked very good. In practice, my speed wasn't up with where I expected it to be, and it wasn't quite as manoeuvrable as what I thought it would be. So, in retrospect, I might have actually preferred to play this aircraft with only 2 cannon instead of 4 cannon, which again would give it a lot less firepower, and it gives it a slight increase to mobility and airspeed. But I just found this aircraft to be a bit underwhelming for its tier. Could just be that I just didn't have any luck with it, to be honest. At tier 8 we have the I-250, which is another very good little aircraft. This aircraft is kind of the first one where you get the really big firepower that you will find characterises the end of this line. Stock, it has 3 20mm cannons, which is what I stuck with through most of the testing. But it gets the option later on of having 2 23mm cannons and 1 37mm cannon. And that 2 23s and 1 37 is the standard armament of this line all the way up to the MiG-15 bis, although the cannons do get better as the tiers progress. But this aircraft, it's a dual engined aircraft effectively. It's got a regular piston engine, but with a jet engine at the back, which, well, it's used all the time, but it gives you a bit of boost. And this aircraft's actually, it's pretty fast. Top speed of 820, its maximum dive speed still not that high though at 880. Its rate of climb's actually really good at 26 meters per second. Well, I say really good because that's the second best climb rate in this line, but there are still tier 8 aircraft with a higher climb rate. But while it's gaining speed and climb rate, it doesn't lose much in manoeuvrability. With the 3 cannon armament, it's only slightly less manoeuvrable than the I-220, and can actually still easily outturn most aircraft in its tier. Plus it can also outrun most of these aircraft in its tier, and with an altitude performance of 2.4 kilometers, it's also good at flying above aircraft of most of its tier. So I find this little I-250 to be a very potent adversary, and a great joy to fly. At tier 9 we have the MiG-9, which I believe was the first mass-produced jet fighter to enter Soviet service. As I said earlier, it's got 1 37mm cannon and 2 23mm cannons, which gives it very good firepower. in this aircraft it's also hugely fast, or I should say blisteringly fast or something, whatever. Top speed of 965 kilometers an hour with the top engine, and its dive speed's over 1,000 kilometers an hour. In terms of performance, the rate of climb is quite low on this aircraft, and I usually, well not usually, but often I forgot that and put this aircraft into climb and be kind of surprised that aircraft were catching up to me even though they had much weaker engines. But I think that's actually a problem with the early jet fighters across the board, they just don't have very high climb rates. But in exchange for gaining so much speed, this aircraft, it loses a lot of manoeuvrability. Its rate of roll is still pretty good, but its turn time has increased a lot from the I-250. And while it can still outturn a lot of aircraft at its tier, I'm feeling that by this point this aircraft is much more useful as kind of a horizontal boom and zoom aircraft. It's not great in a dive and it's not great in climbing, but it's fast on level flight, and it's got the firepower that even if you only get split second aiming you can still do a lot of damage in that time. Finally, at tier 10 we have the MiG-15 BIS, which of course was the famous communist fighter plane from the Korean War where it battled the F-86s over MiG Alley. It's also got two 23mm cannons and one 37mm cannon, which despite this being the line's standard armament from tier 8, it's still very good at tier 10. You will find that it's got more firepower than most other fighter aircraft at this tier. And although I don't think it beats any of the heavy fighters, it can actually be comparable. I mean, you still don't go head on with them because you've got a lot less hit points than they do, but you can do a lot of damage to them. Again, like the other fighters in this line, it's got a high top speed, but the dive speed isn't that great. The rate of climb is up to 27 meters per second, which is pretty good, but not fantastic. And its turn time and rate of roll, maneuverability, they're still better than most, but not quite as good as, well, if you're accustomed to from kind of the first 4 aircraft in this line. Again, it can still outturn most aircraft you'll come against, but I still find it's best used as a horizontal boom and zoom. You've got the firepower, you've got the speed, you can't really climb away, you can't really dive away. Turning doesn't always work to your advantage. So that's how I'd fly this aircraft. having said that, it's still really fun to fly this thing. Should also point out, I know it's got to the end of the video, but I should have mentioned it at the start. All these aircraft, they're all very fast, but they seem to lose energy very quickly in turns. I mean, they're all great at turning, but if you get into a sustained turning fight, you find your speed just dropping off to nothing, and you become quite vulnerable after, you know, if another enemy aircraft shows up. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to like it if you did, or subscribe if you want to see more. Also, you can check out some of my other video series down below. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.